morning. Can you tell if your child is being trafficked? Would you know the signs? We're going to talk about that and more on A Clarion Voice. Good morning. Live from the Hub Studios in Atascadero, this is Mark Sobowitz with the Clarion Voice, and I am really excited about today because we have a couple of conversations that we're going to have this morning revolving around the movie Sound of Freedom, which I had the opportunity to see last week, and it stirred me up. It made me angry, it made me sick, and so we're going to be talking on a Clarion Voice about the issue that the movie addressed, which is child trafficking. And we hope that you'll be informed and be aware. And I also want to make mention of the fact that if you have people that have not seen the movie, I want you to go to angel.com/freedom, and I want you to pay it forward. Get free tickets, hand them out to your friends, and have them see the movie, because the longer the movie is in the theaters, the more aware people will get. But today we have the pleasure of having Susan Carter of Freedom Calling and Dennis Prange, an old friend who's been helping Susan with her efforts involving the movie. And Susan, Dennis, thank you very much for being here. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mark.
So addressing the initial question about can you tell if a child is being trafficked, Susan, tell us what people need to look for. What are some of the more obvious signs?
Well, that's a really huge question, especially now that this movie's come out. The last 20 years, there's been an effort to wake up America to trafficking here. Polaris Project says there's 25 different industries around the world in America that include trafficking. So it's been a problem for a long time.
Right.
What this movie showed is what is happening in Central America countries primarily, but any third world country, there is a lot of kidnapping and there's a lot of crime within law enforcement and the justice system. And this is something that hasn't been really clearly defined until, for me, recently. And I understand further that, as Americans, we've been well educated and our kids know about stranger danger, and we think we're pretty smart for keeping aware of our surroundings. And our law enforcement and judicial system have been, fairly honest with you're innocent until proven guilty. And so we don't have the same kind of systems in place as third world countries. You can buy the law enforcement in different countries. You can't buy them so easily here, right? So this is not really about kidnapping in America. I just want to say first off the bat, this is traffickers, pimps, predators have gone into what's called grooming children.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
So there's this difference between somebody snatching your kid out of a shopping cart someplace and running away versus let's get to know these kids. Let's pick out the ones that are more vulnerable and who are looking for love in all the wrong places or don't have, a parental system that is really engaged in their life. And let's build a trust with them so that eventually they will follow what we want to do.
And they addressed this in the movie too,
There's
I believe.
Yes, there's a little bit of that. So I just want off the bat, we should not be a people of fear that something's going to happen to our kids and we can't have them go to the park or walk down the street, or
Mhm.
that's not really what's happening in America at all. I'm sure there's fringes of those things, and especially with um, divorced parents that want custody of the kids, that kind of thing. But in general, this is not what we're finding. It's the grooming process. Okay. So as we're learning about trafficking, there ends up being a lot of spokes to that wheel. And most recently, we're very concerned about online safety and how much the kids are um, allowed to have their technology, 24/7 in some cases, um, to have these conversations in chat rooms, etc. Along with predators are being very smart, and they are posing as their friends. They're posing as youth with whatever photos they come up with that are youthful, the lingo. They pretend like they live in the same area. They talk about the same events, and this is the concern
I
for
see.
us in America.
Okay.
This is the concern because parents are not thinking that there's a danger when kids are talking to their friends, but they don't realize that there are predator rings. And even around the world, um, Linda Smith with Shared Hope International found that there is, oh no, it was Opal Singleton with Million Kids. In her last presentation, she was talking about a specific ring in the Philippines of teens that are paid to come in and taunt kids online to get them um, to extort them for nude photos that come across, and that whole thing ends up being called sexploitation. But it's something that's becoming more prevalent here in America, and kids don't know what to do with that kind of demand for money for something that they sent across the internet
Right.
thinking it was innocent enough, right? And they play these games, and then they get in a huge bind, and some of them are committing suicide. So for us, this is a really, more pertinent problem.
I see. Now, in and about the area, as we're doing our normal daily things and whatever, are there? I know that when we've talked to you before, you mentioned, specific clues as to whether or not a child is being trafficked. For example, if they look, scared or shy or whatever, that sort of thing. Are there any other signs that people can look for?
Okay, Mark, everything that has happened up to this point has really been under wraps.
Right.
Yes, we've got a younger child with an older person.
Hmm.
They may be two different nationalities, races. We haven't thought a thing about that,
Right.
right?
Right.
Okay. So as trafficking is becoming more um, aware, as we're understanding it a little better, law enforcement is being trained to ask more questions. So if they stop a car where there's an adult in the front, a child in the back, and they don't look related, and
Hmm.
there looks like there's some fear or something. So that's, that's an extreme case, right? It's not the everyday normal thing
Right.
because we don't think anything of it when we have mixed marriages and that kind of
Hmm.
thing. So, which is fine. So up to this point, we couldn't really tell. But now, with the vulnerabilities that kids have and the questions that can be asked, there's more evidence, more convictions. There's more convictions, and so they're starting to be able to see the patterns a little better. Okay, so it's not real obvious, but I want to say that that kids, you know, uh, if we all know what a vulnerable kid looks like, that would be a place to at least start.
Hmm.
So if they have no emotion,
Hmm.
that's a really big clue. Um, my mind was reeling there for a minute as to which way to go.
Right. No, I understand because I was watching, on YouTube the other night about this group called Airline Ambassadors,
Mhm,
who are a group of stewardesses and airline personnel who have been trained to look for signs of, child trafficking, and one of the things that came out, which was very interesting to me, is the fact that most kids have, like backpacks,
mhm,
for example, or they have their iPads or whatever it is that's in their in the backpack, but a child that is being trafficked has nothing,
mhm,
absolutely nothing. And
Mm.
so that's a clear indication, at least the way it was being communicated, that something is wrong, that this kid is maybe, being trafficked or
mhm,
being sent off or something like that. And so it's really interesting to me that that's a sign also
mhm,
of, in the area, if a kid is, if there's no no material possessions that they have or whatever, and they're just sort of reserved or whatever, then that's a sign, at least to me, which would
mhm.
be clear about a kid being trafficked. So
Okay, I
go
do
ahead.
have to say, when in the grooming process, though, the trafficker will give them many gifts. So in the airplane, that might be a sign,
Right.
but on our school campuses, if a student has gone from not having certain things to all of a sudden having more things that are high priced, that could also be a sign. A second phone, more bling, going to concerts and with friends that.
Hmm.
So not that a parent would go, oh, my child has this friend and they're going to concerts and they've got more things. I think there is something to be aware of with if your children start receiving gifts.
Okay. Okay. I want to address something as far from your perspective, Dennis, as far as looking at from the man's involvement in all this, because a lot of traffickers are men. There are women that are
Mhm.
traffickers, but from what your perspective, how would you address the issue of people, men being involved to act as a preventative for trafficking? How would you look at that?
Well, there's a lot more men that should step up, and thank God for Susan and the other women that have been doing this since 14, right here.
Mhm, mhm,
Um,
mhm,
but a lot of us men are too involved with I don't know, our sports, our self-esteem issues or something. I feel so inadequate, but I'm willing, I'm available, I guess.
Right.
And but one of the things that you brought up about watching out, it's like, so are we supposed to be paranoid? Are we supposed to be suspicious of all these people we see around us? I mean, we don't want to live that way, right?
No, that's true.
But I was just
mhm.
thinking about the signs on the freeway that say, watch out for the cyclists,
Right.
so just be aware, I guess, of your
Oh, that's
circumstances
good.
and, look at, like, Susan's got lists of things to watch out for. And
Mhm.
it's not like we need to be looking at every couple or every
Right. Right.
group
I
of
understand that. But I mean,
children or
from your
adults.
perspective, though, as a man, you were just saying that men need to step up and whatever. How can they do that, or what would you recommend? I mean, to people, aside from mentioning that they're being paranoid or whatever,
Well,
looking at the
get on her mailing list and
okay,
see what the suggestions are for education is number one. I mean, I
Mhm,
had no idea this was going on to the
okay,
extent that it is.
okay,
It's hard to believe, especially here. And yet we know from the district attorney's office, thank God again for Dan Dow, because
mhm,
a couple years ago he prosecuted a kind of a famous thing that a couple of girls were brought over from Fresno and were being trafficked right here,
mhm,
hmm,
and they successfully prosecuted that. I think the perpetrator's behind bars now, but
mhm,
okay,
so like a lot of counties don't have the sheriff's department and the DA's office that are so adamant
Mhm.
Good
about
point.
about a lot of issues. So this one that we're talking about today, of course.
Okay.
But yeah, we just need to kind of bite the bullet and say no to some of those other things that we distract ourselves with,
Okay.
you know, and be uncomfortable. I mean, it's really uncomfortable for me to sit here. But she asked me to help out, and I'm here, and other men need to, like, it wasn't really comfortable to go down to the theater and what I say accost people. We weren't really accosting
No,
people,
right.
but we were greeting people as they came down the ramp, having seen the movie, and asking them if they would like to sign up on the email list and get some more information. I call it the next step. So what's the next step? Once we become aware, then we're kind of responsible, or should feel some responsibility for helping out where we can. And of course, the biggest thing probably, which we kind of minimize, it's easy to say, well, let's pray about it. But really, anything that's going to happen that's going to glorify God's kingdom is going to start with prayer, right?
Sure. Absolutely. So you were telling me earlier about the response that you were getting as far as the literature that you were handing out and whatever. Did any men come up to you and want to get involved as far as signing up?
Oh yeah, we had a number of men. It was interesting. I stopped by there one evening because I was close, and there wasn't anybody there at the table because it wasn't the time for the release of the
The
theater.
movie, right?
But there was one guy there that had been. He was kind of looking at the stuff on the table, and so I went up and we had a great discussion. And he was real interested, and signed his email address, and so yeah, there are some men that are.
Do you think that if more men got involved, that it would sort of deflect the problem somewhat? If more men got involved, because they would be more aware.
Well, yeah, and it probably goes back to the man being the father in the home, the way the father should be the father. In other words, not chasing his hobbies or
Hmm.
the sports, or not even being there. Unfortunately, there's a lot of single parent homes, and those are probably the most vulnerable.
Right. Right.
But fathers need to step up and learn how to be good husbands and fathers.
We're going to be talking with Patrick Erlandson, who's the founder of Father Con, which does exactly that. He gets fathers involved and men involved in being more aware and being more involved in education of other men, to make them more aware of that. So I appreciate you mentioning that, because I think that because of the family being not what it used to be, the family structure, that I think indirectly it causes these issues that come up, the trafficking and kids running away and things like that. Before I forget, what is the email address or the that people can send their responses to in order to get involved? Is that freedomcalling.org or something like that?
Oh, I
I'm
wish I
sorry.
had a Freedom Calling email. I don't. Okay. If they're interested in getting on our email list, they can either contact our website, www.freedomcalling.org,
Okay.
or my email address is nca@susan .net.
Okay. NCA.
Oh, no, .org. Yeah, NCA for Susan. Oh, at Gmail. There we go. At gmail.org.
Okay.
Got it.
That's okay. I wanted to get that out before I forgot,
Thank
because,
you.
I think people need to, at least
Well,
have
can
an
I say that Freedom Calling is a local organization? So we are out there in the community, sharing awareness about trafficking and bridging that gap for those that, are in the community.
opportunity.
And we are out there in the community sharing awareness about trafficking and bridging that gap for those that, are in the community. can't believe it's happening here, right? And we have events and we have survivor fundraisers and we have different initiative and projects. So if they want to get on our email list, they can follow along with what we're doing locally. That would be wonderful.
Okay. We were talking earlier about the signs of, trafficking and all that. Okay. So if a person was in a position to even suspect
Mhm.
that was happening, there is a national
Mhm.
hotline. Is that
Yes.
correct? I don't know what the phone number is or whatever. Do you know?
Yes. So Polaris Project, which also is a wonderful site to get information about trafficking in the U.S., has a national hotline number, and it is and I'm going to say it a little different, but it helps us remember it.
Okay.
1-888-3737-888. And for those that are survivors or victims of situations, they can text a number on Be Free. I believe they can text help at the number Be Free, BEFREE. And so there's two ways to
Okay.
reach the hotline.
Okay. Very good. I have a burning question in my mind here, and I don't want to throw this whole conversation off, but it's been noted that in the United States, we are the biggest purveyors of child trafficking in the world.
And users.
And users, yes, because in the movie, without giving it away for those who haven't watched it, they talk about somebody who's online and viewing children and all that. Why do you think that is? I mean, what is your
Too much
opinion?
leisure time.
Pardon me?
Too much discretionary time and money.
Okay.
I mean, just off the top of my head,
Right,
I'd say
I understand.
that's part of it.
With you.
Okay.
Mhm.
Susan, what do you think?
I would agree with you.
Okay.
We are a very rich nation. We have an abundance of time. And a lot of people don't work the same way that other countries have to work. I did read a couple years ago that our welfare system was 51% of the nation. So that kind of opened up my eyes to people have a lot of time.
Okay. I think also, just again, talking off the top of my head here, but I'm thinking that the pandemic had something to do with it too. I mean, to increasing it because people were at home, and things like that. And so that escalated things.
Too much tube time.
That did escalate on the porn sites.
Okay.
That was registered.
Okay.
Yes. I think it was Exodus Cry registered that information.
I see.
That was very eye-opening.
Okay. You were mentioning something about events and things like that Freedom Calling does. Aside from having the tables at the movie theaters, are there any upcoming events that you're having that brings up information about this that people can get involved with?
I don't have anything specific. We've been at the movie theaters in Atascadero, Colony Cinemas, and Downtown Slow Cinemas for 3 weeks. And so it's really stretched us, stretched our volunteers.
Okay, gotcha.
So we don't have anything specifically lined up, but I do know that there is going to be an event at Laguna Lake called, I think it's Human Trafficking Awareness, Caravan for Awareness, Human Trafficking Awareness.
Oh.
Caravan.
Okay.
So they're going to be driving on Sunday, this coming Sunday, the 30th, from 3 o'clock to 4 o'clock, and we will have an information table down there as well.
Ah, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So this is really the movie itself has really spurred up awareness. I mean, people, and I'm thinking the longer that the movie is in the theaters, the more awareness that there's going to be of the problem, and more people are going to get involved. And so I'm thinking that go see the movie.
Yeah. Also, Mark, I want to say that, I want
Good
to
place
say,
to start.
yeah,
Thank you. Yes.
that we are ramping up our involvement in schools. And
Oh,
so we
okay.
just had
Very
a
good.
school presenters meeting from those that signed on the response card to get involved in school outreach. And so that's something, we really need the contacts to be invited into the schools.
I see.
And so we're making an effort to go to all the districts to work with the teachers that we know. And so we would love to have more contact that way.
Oh, that's
We're
great.
already in 3 different districts and teaching on human trafficking 101 and online safety.
Okay.
And so that's been wonderful. We just would love to see it develop more.
Okay. Very good.
Mhm.
Okay. I don't know if all the answers were given today, but I do know one thing. You need to see Sound of Freedom. Go to a theater. Go to the Colony Theater. Go to the Park Cinemas in Paso Robles. Go to the Downtown Cinema in San Luis Obispo. Go to angel.com/freedom.
Yeah.
Pay it forward. If somebody hasn't seen the movie, get them a ticket. And I'm almost tempted to say, okay, look, we're going to buy out a theater
There we
to
are.
make sure that people are going to see this. If you're interested in doing this, contact
you
us,
go.
make a comment, or you can go to clarionvoice.com. I would love to do that, to just buy out one of these theaters and say, okay, here's the movie. You need to be aware. So let me know if you're interested. I would be more than happy to entertain that idea and go from there. But in any case, Dennis, Susan, thank you so much
You're
for
very
being here
welcome.
and giving your perspectives. And we hope that if you like this video, please share it. I say that all the time, but I really mean it this time. Share the video, because the information that was given today is the tip of the iceberg. There is so much more information about child trafficking and what it does to people and how it damages, families and children, especially. And then hit the bell for future notifications. And we welcome your comments. Please comment here on the video. Let us know how you feel, and we'll be glad to entertain those thoughts. And thank you very much for being with us. And this is Mark Sobowitz, live from the Hub Studios with a Clarion Voice.